If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, so notice of the January 25th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Education was emailed to the clerks of the boroughs of Essex Fells, North Caldwell, and Roseland, and to the Township of Fairfield, and to the editor of the Progress on January 7th, 2021, and the Star Ledger on the same day.
Can I just call the roll real fast?
Oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
It was up there and I didn't even think of it. Sorry.
Don't worry.
So sorry.
Miss Egan?
Getting
Here.
ahead of myself.
Miss Fahey?
Here.
Miss Marcus?
Here.
Mr. Parati?
Here.
Miss Rubinich?
Here.
Miss Calderon? Miss Calderon?
Here.
Okay. Miss Skelton?
Here.
Mr. Stampone?
Here.
Miss Wojcicki?
Here. Okay, and sorry about that. It's not like we don't do that every month, but
Don't worry.
I don't need to read that again. Welcome, everyone. I just have a couple things I wanted to say. I just want to start off by commending our staff. I think they've been working very diligently and with such a passion to get our students in the buildings more often. And I know that they are really dedicated to moving along to our next phase. So I just want to say thank you to all of them for their hard work. I don't know if anyone had a chance to see over the weekend, the West Essex Maskers put on the performance of Greek mythology Olympiganza. This was done by Zoom, which was so amazing because these kids were just phenomenal. The students were so creative. It was very entertaining and they really did a great job. I mean, it's so hard to do something on Zoom, as we all know, but to put on a performance like that, they really did just an amazing job. So I just want to commend them all. I think there was about 40 students. I don't know the exact number, but as I was counting the different students, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of kids involved in that. So I just want to tell them that they did they had a great performance. I really appreciated it. I also want to thank Brittany, Miller Hernandez, Pat McGlynn, and Alexis Spear. They did a great job putting this performance on. So congratulations to all the students. I also want to mention that we have a teacher, Miss Lisa Rubel, who will be retiring as of July 1st. I just want to thank her for her 28 years of dedication to our district. She works in our special services department. She will be missed by the district and by the students. We just want to wish her well in her retirement. Hope she has a happy and healthy and long retirement. And that's all I have. So, Damien?
Sure. Melissa, you want to pull up the slides? And I also just want to echo Mary's thoughts on the Maskers performance, and just any event that you plan now takes 3 to 4 times as much time and effort. So to put on a production like that is really impressive. And also, I would like to also, before I get into my report, acknowledge Mrs. Lisa Rubel as well, who has devoted 28 years of service to our district as a special education teacher. Ms. Rubel is a hard worker. She's passionate. She always puts her kids first. We will definitely miss her, and I wish her nothing but health, happiness, and success in her retirement. Just a couple brief announcements. We did reopen on Tuesday, January 19th for in-person instruction. We did get 1 week in the books, and now we're into week 2 of our current hybrid model. Also, reminder that tomorrow, both buildings are operating on a remote day. Okay, the middle school is doing their MAP testing. And the only students coming into the high school tomorrow are a portion of our 11th graders to take in-person PSATs. And again, I want to thank our high school administration for, again, making another effort in getting our students in the building for a very important standardized test. We are in person back after tomorrow, but I do want to mention this, that we do have some weather on the radar, potentially afternoon and into the evening and overnight tomorrow. And as I've mentioned, we do not have a delayed opening hybrid bell schedule. So if there was a need to, we can easily switch to remote learning if the weather, if the weather doesn't cooperate with us. Okay, so now let me get into my report. I've been putting out the weekly COVID reports to the community. I've been trying to put them out consistently on Sundays. And week ending January 16th, our region remained in the orange high-risk category, so we will continue to operate under the enhanced protocols through the Department of Health. I have been getting some inquiries regarding social distancing, and I just want to make it clear to the board and to anybody else who's on our Zoom meeting tonight that as we move forward, we will continue to follow 6 feet social distancing recommendations from the Department of Health and from the CDC. In addition, our 3 health departments and our school physicians strongly encourage maintaining this standard to reduce the risk of COVID-19 spread. Okay, so any plans that we have moving forward, we will certainly maintain 6 feet social distancing. Our winter sports season 2 started on January 11th. Okay, winter season 2 is basketball, ice hockey, and fencing. To be accurate, ice hockey did actually start on January 3rd. Winter 2 season A is February 1st, and that's swimming and indoor track. And then there's a winter season 3, which is March 1st, and that's girls volleyball and wrestling. So we are in the middle of, we are about a couple weeks into winter sports. We're following all the NJSIA COVID-19 protocols. And just so the board knows, there is a task force. It's a medical and sports advisory task force for the NJSIAA. And they work independently, but they do communicate regularly. And they make all the recommendations, and the member schools follow those recommendations. Okay, face coverings, the NJSIAA is allowing gaiters now. Gaiters are like a cloth face covering. The CDC does now permit the use of gaiters. However, it must be doubled up. So it's a double lining gaiter. And if you want to see more about that, you can go to special considerations for gaiters and face shields at the CDC website. Okay, I also want to give another big thank you to our reopening task force, okay, and our administration. Our task force has 65 members from every stakeholder group. Also, Lisa Hulse, our director of guidance, she spent the entire weekend and last several days dissecting and balancing cohorts in Genesis. So thank you, Lisa, and thank you to our task force. As you know, off of our task force, we have several committees, and two committees in particular met quite a few times prior to Thanksgiving and after winter recess. To be specific, seven committee meetings took place between November 12th and January 25th. And that was between our Building Operations Committee and our Distance Learning Committee. And those are the 2 committees that kind of work hand in hand to look at the cohorts, develop bell schedules, to look at the remote learning plan. So a great deal of time and effort over the past several weeks. Throughout some of these meetings prior to the holidays, we had agreed in these committees that we needed to make adjustments to our cohorts. And we felt that the ideal time would be for the beginning of marking period 3, which is Monday, February 1st. So prior to the holidays, we started the planning of taking a look at our cohorts. When we came back from winter recess, we really did hit the ground running. Okay. Our administrative team got together, and between January 8th and January 11th, we administered surveys, okay, to all stakeholder groups. On January 13th, we administered a marking period 3 questionnaire, okay, because what we needed was a full-fledged commitment for either in-person learning or fully remote learning. For us to be able to create a schedule for marking period 3, we needed numbers. We needed to know who was committing to in-person instruction and who wanted to commit to fully remote learning. So we were able to get that data. Shortly after that, we spent several days looking at that data. And then Lisa Hulse, our Director of Guidance and Principals, they were running cohorts. They were looking at numbers. They were evaluating facilities, seeing how the numbers rolled out. And shortly you'll hear from the principals and from our Director of Curriculum on how the cohorts will be structured and what the results of those surveys and the results of the questionnaire. Okay, we're sticking to a timeline that I'm happy to say we're moving forward with, which led us to today, where we met with our committee and we presented our cohort plan for February 1st. We're here this evening to present this plan to our Board of Education. And then this week, either tomorrow or Wednesday, the principals will publish those plans in a calendar and schedule for the month of February. So with that said, I will turn it over to Ryan, our Director of Curriculum.
Thanks, Damien. As Mr. Machochi mentioned, this survey went out to students and parents. So I put the results together. It went out on January 8th. We kept that open for 4 days. And we had the best response, best participation we've had in any of our surveys. So thank you to everyone who filled out that survey, and especially those of you who took the extra time to fill out comments and feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Your feedback is always appreciated. So thank you for taking the time to do this. The huge plus was the students. We had over 300. We had 300 more students fill out this survey than they did last time. So as you can see, we were 948 responses. And parents showed up in full force again, about 50 more than last time. So we had 1,100 participants responses from the parents. So thank you for everybody. These are great numbers. It makes the data that much more valid. Next one. So one of the first questions was I asked the students and the parents to identify whether they were for marking period 2, in person or full time. So this could be whether they officially marked themselves as in person or they were in person at the time, but you see 53% of our students were in person, and the parents said that about 63% of the kids were in person. And again, of course, that has changed significantly from marking period 3, which we'll talk about later. Next one. This has been a big issue, and these survey questions we've asked repeatedly ever since probably last March when we first went to remote. So we wanted to see progress in things. As you can see here, students still feel like almost 77% of them feel that it's too much screen time, whereas only about half of our parents feel it's too much. Regardless of where that number is in actuality, it's obviously something we're always going to work on, we're always going to address, and our teachers and support staff are always looking at ways to reduce screen time for our kids. But the key is we want to reduce it in an effective way, not just give breaks where students are, not engaged and, doing other things that have nothing to do with academics. So we're looking for the best ways to reduce this in a positive way. Next one's a question that was only asked of the students. We asked them to describe their level of engagement. So 10% felt the level of engagement was high, 69% felt it was medium, and 20% felt it was low. So you see a wide variety. We do hear both sides of this discussion. Some say, it's too much instruction. My kids don't have a break. And then others are saying, well, I have that screen break, but my kids really aren't doing anything. They're going on their phones and they're not engaged enough. So this kind of points out the wide range, the gamut of responses we get in terms of level of engagement from our students. Next one was about our All Classes Meet Wednesdays. If you're not familiar, Wednesdays that are dedicated as all classes meet are virtual only. This week is a crazy week because of PSAT testing, so it doesn't fall on a Wednesday. But typically, our all classes meet. It falls on a Wednesday and it's virtual only. So, as you can see here, 93% of students either agree or strongly agree in having these all classes meet Wednesdays dedicated to support and enrichment. So these are days that are focused on that only, and except for AP classes, what we say in the district is nothing new and nothing due. As far as the parents go, you have about 66% of them either agree or strongly agree with the continued use of this day for support and enrichment for our students. Next one. Next question revolved around the 88-minute lunch block. To no surprise, we have slight difference in students and parents. You have 73% feel it's appropriate. You actually had 6% of students feel it was too short. I'd like to identify those kids. But 20% felt it was too long. So again, you do have that group, and we have heard from both of students saying, it is too long. It is too long of a break. But the vast majority feel that it's appropriate. And parents are split on this one, with a little bit more feeling it's appropriate. 54% of the parents said that length of time is appropriate. And again, at the time of this survey, we hadn't had much in person at all. So, when you're in person, the kids have to take the bus home and they have time to eat and stretch and do that other stuff. The 88-minute block is going to be a lot more meaningful. When this survey was done, the kids were at home. So it's obvious that the 88-minute lunch might be a little lengthy when you're virtual the whole time. And then a couple questions about their attendance. We had heard this from several stakeholders, so we asked them, were you more likely to attend in person if there were more students in the classroom? One of the issues was, there's only 2 or 3 kids in the class, so I don't really want to be there. But according to the data, you have only 40% said yes, they are more likely to attend. 24% said no, and another 35% says the number of students in the class has no effect on their decision at all. Parents, on the other hand, said 57% said they were more likely to send their kids if there were more kids present. 20% said no, and again, 22% felt that it didn't change their decision to send their kids to school one way or the other. And I believe this is the last one. We asked students and parents, would you prefer to attend in person more often? Again, if you choose in person, you're in right now you're in one of 3 cohorts. So if you could attend in person, all safety regulations, of course, being followed. 55% of students said no, they would not attend in person more often if they were given the opportunity. Again, not too much of a surprise here. Whereas the parents, 75% of them said absolutely yes. If they had the opportunity to send their kids more often to school, they would. So what does all of that mean? Well, based on the data, and you can go to the next one, Melissa. We've decided, discussion, and when I say data, this is not just this survey data. This is anecdotal data, the comments that students and parents left, all the discussions in committee meetings. So this is input from all over the place, support staff, teachers. Based on all of this information, we've decided to leave the bell schedule as is. There was certainly nothing in those surveys that led us to believe that there was something, grossly wrong. All classes meet Wednesdays. The vast majority felt it was useful, so we want to continue to use those. Again, dedicated to support and enrichment. The screen time, which I know one of our stakeholder meetings, is, a student, brought this up. We will continue to address that. It may not result in a change in our bell schedule, but a screen time is something that's been addressed in the classroom. Teachers have been working on this, almost since last March, where they're constantly varying the types of activities that they're doing in the classroom. Some are going to work well, some are not, but we want our teachers and our support staff to constantly try different things, try to give a variety of different activities, to break up the direct instruction. So we'll continue to work on that. And this kind of goes without saying, but we've started examining these things, whether it's curriculum, instruction, assessment, whatever it is. We've started examining these things back last March, and it's not going to stop. We're going to continue to make adjustments to the curriculum, to how things are taught, how we assess, all the activities done in the classroom, we are going to constantly make improvements. So that's going to be ongoing. So our committees are going to continue to meet to constantly make improvements to the program that we're presenting to our kids. So the next, our principals are going to discuss cohort logistics in their respective buildings. So we're going to start with the middle school. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dunleavy.
Thanks, Ryan. Mary, I just wanted to mention something that I forgot to mention is that we did add high school students to our building operations committee, which was a great help. They joined, I think, the last 3 meetings, and they bring a whole different perspective to things. So we would talk about things, and then we would say, well, what do you guys think? And then it was nice to hear from students, and we even took some of their suggestions. One of them being administering the student survey at the beginning of a class one day, and I think that's why the response rate was the highest it ever was. So,
That was a great call.
Having them on the committee has been great, and we'll continue to include our students on these meetings moving forward. So I just wanted to make note of that, so people listening and the board members know that our students are contributing to some of these decisions that we're making.
Great.
So now I'll turn it over to Dr. Dunleavy.
Good evening, everyone. Melissa, when you have a minute, if you could turn the slide. Thank you. Okay, good evening. If you have read any of my weekly newsletters or attended any middle school parent nights, you've likely heard the words whole child. Educating the whole child means that we care about kids, we care about their academics, but even more so, we care about their social and emotional learning and their social and emotional growth. So as we begin this presentation, please know that West Essex Middle School, and actually, the high school as well, and our entire district is committed to getting students back into the building, not just for the academic benefits, but because we truly believe that establishing routines, getting dressed and getting out of the house and socializing with peers and adults, these are all components of keeping our children healthy and happy. And so we respect that some families, for a variety of reasons, prefer the full-time remote option. But for those students who are comfortable coming to campus, our goal is to really create greater opportunities for those students in particular to attend in-person instruction. So before I get into the data, I would like to thank, as Mr. Machochi said, our Director of Guidance, Mrs. Hulse, for working throughout the weekend on our cohorts. The cohorts were randomly generated through an algorithm that exists within the Genesis portal. And this algorithm attempts to balance both the high school and the middle school. Obviously, we don't want too many students in a class, but we also don't want too few. So some of the majority of the work is the algorithm, but then there is also some other balancing that takes place so that we don't have a class or 2 classes with only 1 or 2 students. So there is quite a bit of work involved. So I just want to thank Mrs. Hulse for all of that. Melissa, next slide, please. Okay, so according to the results of the Marking Period 3 questionnaire, at the middle school, we have a total of 560 students. For Marking Period 3, 219 of those students are opting to be full-time remote for the marking period, and the remaining 341 are opting to be in person. So roughly a third of our student population is opting to be full-time remote. That leaves 60%, and if we divide that into 2 cohorts, it puts us at 30% on each day. And some interesting information at the bottom of the slide. During marking periods 1 and 2, the 3 cohort model equated to approximately 185 students per day. So if you took 560 kids and divided into 3 cohorts, you came out with about 185. During marking period 3, we estimate that our 2 cohort model will have fewer students, actually 171 students per day. So again, we're taking that 341 and cutting it in half, and it's about 171 students per day. Melissa, if you could go to the next slide, please. Some key facts with the middle school 2 cohort model. First of all, it would begin with the start of marking period 3, which is Monday, February 1st. I also want to mention that we are proposing this right now just for marking period 3. I believe there would be another questionnaire sent out to all families for marking period 4. So I want to be clear with that. We would have 2 cohorts, orange and purple. We're continuing with the colors. The cohorts would alternate days, and on a normal week, each cohort would attend in-person instruction 2 days out of the 5-day week. As was just mentioned by Mr. Gupta, the all classes meet virtual Wednesdays will continue, and the CDC guidelines and 6 feet social distancing will be maintained. And then the official cohorts, I know that's going to be a question of many families, that those should come out any day now, definitely by the end of the week, but I know that there's still some kind of tweaking going on, if you will. Melissa, you can go to the next slide. Okay, this slide provides a quick, just a sample overview of what the calendar would look like. So you can see we're rotating between orange and purple days. You can see that we have the all classes meet on Wednesdays, and each group is meeting twice a week in person. This obviously would get slightly adjusted if there was, we have President's Weekend coming up or things of that nature, but this just gives you an idea of puts a visual to what some of the points that I just made. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge one challenge that we foresee at the middle school. And that is that for many of our 7th grade students, the first day of this 3rd marking period will feel like the first day of school all over again. New cohorts mean that some children may be in a class not knowing many peers. And so while we unfortunately are unable to accommodate cohort requests, I can tell you that our counseling team is working diligently with our teachers to discuss some transition activities and just to make sure everyone is aware that this, it will be, some kids may have a lot of nerves and some fears coming into the building, right? Those butterflies in your stomach. So we're aware of that, and we do want to make everyone feel comfortable and are doing our best to work as a team. As parents, I would encourage you to just remind your child to demonstrate courage and resiliency in overcoming just yet another obstacle. So as I conclude, I would like to thank our district-wide building operations and distance learning committees for contributing to some of these decisions regarding the marking period 3 calendar. I would also like to thank all the students, parents, and teachers for completing that questionnaire. We're really excited at the middle school to provide greater opportunities for students to come to campus. And so I appreciate everyone's hard work. And at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. DeLiberto.
Thank you, Dr. Dunleavy. Melissa, you can go to the next slide. Go ahead, let the cat out of the bag there. Go ahead. Oh, there it is. It's out. Lisa Rubel. I used to teach a class with Lisa Rubel, and I hope she's out there listening somewhere, because some of the greatest moments of my career were in that one co-taught class that we had. It's got to be like 10, 11 years ago now. And I'm personally going to miss her. West Essex is going to miss her. And also, I believe that this is the last week for Janice Semmering. So 2 great powerhouse teachers. I know because I know them personally, and I know that they're reluctant to leave education, and they love West Essex and they love helping kids. And West Essex is really going to miss him, and I'm going to miss him personally. And there's so many other things that I'd like to report out on, like the Key Club food drive, esports, our renewed efforts in sustainable Jersey. But our cohort progression is really the main focus for tonight. So look for that information and photos on those topics in my upcoming newsletter that'll be out a little bit later this week. We also have a few events that are scheduled, and I believe some of that information is being disseminated. We have the Senior Bowl on June 16th, Junior Prom on April 22nd, because we needed to schedule something before all the dates were gone. And we do remain hopeful. I mean, we don't have crystal balls that tell us exactly what's going to be happening in April, May, and June, but we do remain hopeful that we can, that those events will occur in some form. Of course, congratulations to the Maskers for their virtual production of the Greek mythology Olympiaganza, Mrs. Brittany Miller Hernandez, and for all her work on the production. We also have PSATs tomorrow, as Mr. Michochi. We're happy to administer those for our junior class, and a public service announcement to everyone that's out there on behalf of my nurse, Karen. Please, if you are traveling, contact the nurse. If you are getting tested for COVID, please contact the nurse when you get tested, not when you get the results, please. And because our continued in-person instruction is really contingent on some of those things. And if we have the right information if we have the information in a timely manner, we can continue in-person instruction. So please contact the nurse if you're traveling or if you're getting tested. And without further ado, as Dr. Dunleavy said before, school serves so many purposes above and beyond the academic content of in-person instruction, and in-person instruction just has so many benefits that are very significant. And I'm really happy and honored to present to you this plan today. So given the number of students who have selected in-person instruction and some adjustments that we are able to make on our part, we can go to a single cohort. And that is exactly what it means. We have one cohort. All the kids that selected in-person instruction can come in all the days that we have in-person instruction. So that's basically every day except for our virtual Wednesdays or our virtual all classes meet days whenever they fall. Obviously, they don't fall on Wednesday every single week. But we are able to go to one cohort. Now, in order to make this happen safely for students and staff, we've introduced a few new accommodations for the school day. Okay, so Melissa, let's go to the next slide, please. So here's the response to our questionnaire. We have 1,071 students. Out of those, 512 chose in-person instruction. Okay, so that's not even half. It's 48% of our students. Unfortunately, we're in a little bit of a different place than we were in July and August. So by comparison, earlier this year, when we sent out the original questionnaire of who was coming in person, we had about 95% choosing in-person instruction. Okay, and we went to 3 cohorts of 33% each. And when that started, when in-person instruction began in October, we had approximately 350 students coming to the building per day. Okay. Since then, it has declined somewhat, and I'm going to give you some accurate numbers on the next slide. But before I even get there, I would just want to point out that if we were even to attempt 2 cohorts with only 48% of the students choosing in person, we'd be down at 24% cohorts, which is, almost 10% less than what we started with. So we'd actually be going in sort of a backwards motion there. Now, let me share with you some real attendance numbers of what we're really looking at the school, because anybody that is actually in the school knows, like, well, these numbers don't look like right. I don't know if I see 512 kids coming to the building. So can we go to the next slide, please? So here are real attendance numbers from last week. Okay, obviously we had Monday off for Martin Luther King Day, but on Tuesday we had 100 students come to the building. Wednesday, 79. Thursday, 101. Friday, 93. Okay, now we do have some students that are coming every day, so we can't even necessarily add 3 of those cohorts together and come up with the accurate number of students that are coming in person. But once we've accounted for all that, the total number of unique individual students who attended in person last week was only 271 students. 271 students, that's only 25% of the total student population. Now, obviously the last slide said that we have 512 people who have committed to in-person instruction. We don't have any sort of real confirmation of what the pattern is going to be moving forward. My experience this year tells me I don't think we're going to have 512 students coming in. I'm hopeful that it's higher than 271 or 25%. But there's really no guarantee either way whether this pattern is going to persist or whether we're going to get the people who really committed. I hope that we get the people that really committed. I really do. But let me tell you a little bit now about how we're going to make this work. So if we can go to the next slide. So for the board and the public out there, here's just a few quick notes, relevant notes to our facility capacity. The vast majority of our rooms currently hold about 10 students, 10 desks. That's with 6-foot social distancing. At this time, no additional desks are going to be added to any rooms. with what the capacity is now, what it was yesterday, what it was in September, is exactly the same. Not one desk is being moved into any classrooms. Okay, that's very important for the staff to know. I'm sure we have staff on here tonight, and also for parents who are concerned about sending their kids in. Okay, we do have a few rooms that are anomalies. Okay, but in general, they hold 10. Some hold 9, some hold 11. Rooms 200, 202, 318, 502, 515, and 805 all hold fewer students. But I'm talking about like 6 to 8 students. But even with that, only the classes in rooms 318 and 502 might require relocation. And we would work with those teachers. There are several options. We would work with those teachers to see what really met their needs, considering all the options. Moving on, Melissa. So here's some of the logistical changes that are going to take place. All the music classes are going to go to the auditorium. Now, unless you're in one of those music classes, you don't know why that's significant. So music classes are band, orchestra, and choir. Those all occur in large rooms, and when they are large classes, and even with those who have chosen in person, we could get in excess of 20 students to those classes. All those classes are going to the auditorium, okay, where we can accommodate well over 20 people for each of those classes. There is no overlap, because when Lisa Hulse and I were planning, we're doing the master schedule last year for this year, we actually intentionally put them all on different periods so that they could access the auditorium for rehearsal prior to shows. Now, unfortunately, we don't have shows, but fortunately, it just so happens that we can put all those classes in the auditorium. Okay, that also leaves rooms 101 and 105, which are also large rooms, remain mostly open and unused, so that perhaps if we need to use them for something else, we can. All the study halls, second bullet, all the study halls are going to be combined and moved to the red cafeteria. So right now we have two study halls. We call it upper and lower. So it's like an upper class study hall and a lower class study hall, one in each cafeteria. Those currently have about 3 students in each of them, okay? And they all have 2 teachers monitoring, and it's like 2 teachers supervising 2 or 3 students. So those will all get combined and go to one side. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. The library and the black cafeteria, okay, so the free cafeteria now that's open, are going to be designated as satellite rooms. And those satellite rooms are going to hold any overage from rooms that are exceeding maximum capacity. Okay, so we're going to have these satellite rooms that are going to hold students in rooms that have exceeded maximum capacity. I'm going to go on. I'm going to elaborate more on this, so just be patient. The library would hold the humanities classes, the overages from the humanities classes, okay? So that's English, social studies, world language. Currently, in the library, there are 30 desks that we've been using for testing, ACTs, SATs, and there are also 7 tables. There's actually more tables than that, but there's 7 set up right now. We could set up more. And the library would still remain open as an alternate faculty workspace. The black cafeteria, which is now the empty cafeteria, that becomes the satellite room for the math, business, and science sections. And on each side of the cafeteria, we have 40 desks. We can also entertain the possibility of an art satellite room in the hundreds, so that could go in perhaps 101 or 105. The overages from those classes are very small, but for access to supplies, like art supplies and stuff, it might behoove us just to entertain that as an option. I'll be speaking with Mrs. Swanik, Lisa Swanik, and even the art teachers to see whether that really behooves us. These satellite rooms, it should be noted, they will be cleaned and disinfected between periods. So we would have maintenance go in there in between every period, wipe down the desks, the tables, so that doesn't become something that students need to do only in these locations. Okay, moving along, Melissa. Some additional changes. So now here's really how it works. If the classes exceed maximum capacity, the teachers will send students to the appropriate satellite room. Now, teachers can see what potentially, by looking at Genesis, they can see potentially which classes will be over capacity. But they're not actually going to know. No one's going to know until the kids actually show up for class, whether you're over capacity or not. So it might say 12 in person, but only 9 might show up. At which case, then when you get over the 10 or whatever the limit is for that class, at that point, you choose 2 students, 1 student, however many, and you send them to the appropriate satellite room. Now, teachers will rotate which students report to those satellite rooms, so it's not like you're sending the same kids every day, obviously. The PE and the health classes are not included in any of these overage numbers, and I'm going to show you all these numbers in about 2 more slides. But the reason PE and health classes, the gyms are big. They can accommodate any of our numbers, even the health classes. Most of our health classes are in room 514, which can hold 20. We don't have health classes in person exceeding those numbers. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please, Melissa. Okay, so now let's just take a little bit of a different perspective, like almost like a student's perspective on these satellite rooms, because I know the question becomes, well, why am I going to send my kid for in-person instruction if they're going to be remote at school? That doesn't make any sense. Well, let me dispel just a few myths here about what's really going on, because the frequency with which that might happen is just so minimal. Okay. First of all, these numbers that I'm going to show you are all based on full attendance. So that's 512 out of 512. Now, even in non-COVID times, we do not have 100% attendance. Okay. So these numbers are based on everybody showing up all the time. We have a total of 638 class sections. Okay. Out of those 638, only 106 have slight overages. And by slight, I mean 1 or 2. In some cases, it might go up to 3 or 4. So you have rooms at max capacity to 10, and maybe they have 13, 14, rare cases 15. Really, we're talking about 1 or 2, and that's only for 16% of our actual classes. Okay, so if we're going off those numbers, some students will never go. It really depends on your schedule. So we're trying to use these numbers, but I mean, some students might never go. On average, a student may go like once a week. Okay, no students will go more than once a day. They would just tell their teacher, well, if a teacher says, well, can you go to the satellite room? Well, I already went. Then they're going to have to go to the next person on the list. Okay, but here's an example. At full attendance, a class of 12, okay, assuming a 10-person capacity classroom, a class of 12 would send 2 students to the satellite room each day. Now, those same students wouldn't be eligible to rotate back to the satellite room for 6 more days of in-person instruction. So the frequency, again, I can't stress enough, the frequency that they would actually go to these satellite rooms is very minimal. Okay? The satellite rooms, being the library and the black cafeteria, they'll have a quiet study hall environment. There will be supervision in there, but students will Zoom in with headphones and participate as they would participate from home. Okay, so it's not going to be like totally silent, because the kids are going to be raising their hand and participating in class just as they would, but it's not going to be like a raucous lunchroom type of environment either. Okay, moving on. So here are the overage breakouts by period. And this is the data that really drove us to this one cohort with the satellite room model. So down the left column, you could see that those are our periods. Okay. The next column, that's from the humanities. So that would be the population at max capacity. I cannot stress at max, with everybody that said they're coming to the building. In the library, we would have 20 students from the humanities zooming into their classrooms. That same period 1, with full attendance, we would have 12 students from science and math that are in the black cafeteria. And as I told you before, from the fine and practical arts, those numbers are low. We have a bunch of periods where it's down to 0. But even it might be worth it to look at a satellite room in the 100 wing just for access to the art supplies. And there's the total overage. But these numbers are very very manageable because in both these locations, the library and the Black Cafeteria, where the humanities and the science and math students are going, they can accommodate these numbers very, very comfortably. The only one that sticks out a little bit is that period 5 would have 42 students in the study hall. So we might have to work out something a little bit creative there. Again, that's if everyone shows up that has committed to in-person instruction. So again, these are really the numbers that drove us to decide that one cohort is that we could manage it without problems. And I'm sure that people have questions that we can entertain later. If I could just go to, I think there's one more slide. Yes. So transportation considerations. Obviously, with increased attendance, we have to consider the transportation a little bit. So all the siblings should sit together on the bus. And all eligible seniors, eligible means they attended the driving assembly back in the spring and that they have a valid New Jersey driver's license. All seniors are eligible to drive and park on campus. Okay, so that partner program that we typically do, that is remaining temporarily suspended. So all seniors can drive. And final slide, Melissa. I just ask, please, if you signed up for in-person instruction, please send your child, because the challenges of those satellite rooms are so much. It's a challenge that I want to have. So please, if you signed up for in-person instruction, send your child. And I think that is my last slide.
Thank you, Mr. DiLiberto.
Yes, thank you, Caesar, Gina, Ryan, and Damien. As I said earlier, and Lisa Holt, I have to remember Lisa Holt as well. We know you guys have been working diligently on this, and I'm very excited to get the kids in more often. I've been saying that, and to go down to one cohort in high school and 2 in the middle school is, it's a goal we've been looking forward to all year. So thank you for putting all that together.
There is a chance, like Dr. Dunleavy said, that, fourth marking period, if more people opted in, we might have to go to 2. But, if we'll take one cohort for as long as we can get it. So even if it's just the third marking period, we'll take it.
Right. Absolutely. And it's, like we've said, it's been fluid all year. So we're flexible. Hopefully the parents will be flexible, and hopefully it'll work out. Are there any comments from any of the board members?
Yeah, Mary.
Frank, sure.
Kudos to the administration for trying to get more kids for in-person instruction. I think that's a great first step. However, though, I'd like to get a little bit more insight, if you can provide us, why so many are choosing virtual instruction. I mean, it's allowing us to move to 2 cohorts in the middle school, 1 cohort in the high school, but the numbers are, is there any feedback that you can provide us why so many are choosing the virtual instruction?
I mean, I can give you the perspective of one student, and then I see like our principals. I mean, Mr. DiLiberto might want to chime in, but I know that one student told us that they have a really nice setup at home and that they're comfortable at home. They can have multiple screens up, they can have their mask off, and they just feel more comfortable at home. I'm sure there's a lot of other reasons, but that's one that I can speak to right from a student's perspective.
Some are staying home. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Skelton.
I know, go ahead. That just raises real issues for at some point when we all do get to come back, how we get back to any semblance of normal if people are very comfortable at home.
I'm very concerned about how we get everybody back and full. Students could be home for any number of very legitimate reasons and concerns, where, family members with underlying conditions. We have an increasing sort of percentage of the population that also meet our exclusion criteria. And Karen Kinsey, our nurse, is very on top of it at the high school, and so is Denise Logan at the middle school. Some of it, unfortunately, is just convenience too. It's a little bit of inertia has set in. I don't want to. people, it's just convenience, and I don't want to speculate about, what everybody's different motives are, because they really range. Everybody can have different ones, sometimes people happen to be absent when they're taking a test, and that's a very real thing too. And something else that we're addressing as an administration. I'm just hoping we can get in as many as want to come.
I just have a question. The kids had input in this. I'm just wondering, I don't know how, imagine being the kid that has to be sent to the overflow room, how they would feel. I don't know, I'm probably oversensitive. Probably high school kids don't care. I don't know. But was there thought given to how if only one kid has to be sent, how does the teacher pick that kid? And also, how does that kid feel?
So they would just have to rotate it. Some kids actually might want to go to the room, if they think their friend's going to be in there too for some reason. Maybe they would prefer to be in the room, but I just think that the benefits of having them in class for, having that many kids in the building that many days kind of supersedes, the inconvenience of having to go maybe once a week. And some wouldn't be at all. And to be honest with you, it's the classes that have maybe traditionally some of those more sensitive students, they're usually smaller classes that might not have to do that. But even so, that's not to diminish anybody's feelings about feeling rejected because you had to go to the satellite room. But we'll really have to see how much we even use them. It might just be one. It might drop to one. It might drop to none. It's really hard to say how many people are actually going to show up and how much overcapacity those rooms are really going to be.
Mr. DiLiberto, Miss Holes has her hand raised because she'd like to answer the question
Okay,
that
good.
Miss Fahey asked. Is that okay?
And Melissa, real quick, just before Lisa says anything too, I just want to also just state that the satellite room is for one class period. So I know when we're talking about sending the kids to the satellite room, it's not the whole day. So okay, so just to clarify, one class period. Again, let Lisa.
Well, let's say you're going to your favorite class. You're going to science. You're all excited about getting in there. You're going to see your friends, and then you walk in the door, and the teacher says, "Oh, you can't be here. You have to go to the satellite room today."
But it's one period, and like Caesar said, it's not like every day. It could be once a week. It could be never. It could be once every 2 weeks. But let Lisa speak to that. She can speak to that better.
Lisa, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi, all. Sorry, I'm sitting here biting my fingers. I'm like, oh gosh, I wouldn't talk. So anyway, it's a great question. After we left the committee meeting that we had this afternoon, Greg Ashoff, our math supervisor, and I were like, how are we going to make this work? And because he's great with, mathematical equations, I jumped on the phone with him and I said, a lot of teachers that were on the committee were concerned about how do we pick this? And so he came up with a really great idea, and we kind of worked it out on my board. So what our plan is, if the committee agrees, is that we would provide teachers with magnets for their overflowing classes. So let's say, they have 2 classes, we provide them magnets, little square magnets, they put them on their board. Every student basically gets a magnet. And so it's a systematic approach. So, they're lined up alphabetically, and then we'll say the first 2, these 2 students, you're going to be going to the satellite room. Once they go, they move to the bottom. The next 2 are going to be the following day. And so it's like a systematic approach. And it's almost like, having been a teacher and, when you would say like, all right, we're going to go around the room and everybody's going to have a chance to read. The kids kind of get an idea of like, okay, if I, on the fourth paragraph, I'm going to be responsible to go. So if they see their name up there, they could say, okay, in about 3 days, I'm going to be heading to the satellite room. And so we could get prepared for that. So it's really not a surprise the way that Greg and I were working this out, is that it's a systematic approach and the students realize when they're going to be going because their name's going to be on the board, and whoever goes gets moved to the bottom. The next two go, and then they move to the bottom. So it's a visual aid for both the teacher as well as the students to prepare for going to the satellite classroom.
And well, thank you. That is much better. And also the fact of going with another student rather than single, like one student going, I think is more I mean, even if there was room, I'd want to send 2 kids. I don't know about, that's just my opinion, but and you guys work it out.
Classes that have one person like over, and our high school kids like love walking in the hallways because then they'll get to text message real quick on their way to the satellite room and say, which satellite room are you going in? It's just, they're adolescent kids and they're going to say, oh, are you in the overage today? Meet me in the bathroom or something. And then we'll head over together. But that's a good point. But again, seeing the name on the board will also allow for the student to say like, oh, it's almost my turn.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Thank you.
Lisa, that's a great idea. I know, Jill, you want to speak. Sorry, just real quick. Lisa, that's a great idea. You guys came up with that system pretty quickly, and hats off to you and Greg. I think that's great, the visual thing. So
thanks for letting me talk. Bye.
Anytime. Bye. Okay, Jill, I know you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Lisa. That sounds like a well thought out plan, so that it doesn't feel random. My question is actually a follow up, Mr. DiLiberto. I think you ended your slide saying in capital letters, "Please, parents, send your kids to school." If you elected to send your kids to attend in person, my question is in terms of accountability and enforcement. Of those students who have elected to attend in person, obviously there will be excusable absences, right? For whatever, be it COVID or other, incidents. However, I recall, I don't know if it was before the survey or during the survey, there was some mention of if families elect to send their kids in person. I thought I recalled hearing there would be 3 incidents of unexcused absences maybe, and forgive me if I'm restating it, but what I'm actually asking is if you could maybe restate and explain to all of us here on the board and also to the parents out there so we understand what it means to have made a commitment to send the kids to in person and how what processes are in place to hold those students accountable and how they would be notified if it seems they're not showing up and will be asked to revert to remote learning only.
So that's in the questionnaire that parents all filled out 2 weeks ago, and it stipulates that if you miss 3 consecutive in-person times and they're unexcused, so there's plenty of excused absences, and even if a student were to meet the exclusion criteria to quarantine for any reason, those are excused absences. Doctor's visits are excused absences. Driver's license, college visits, those are excused absences. But if you have 3 consecutive unexcused absences, you may be removed from in-person instruction and just go virtual.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tony.
I just have a question about the whole presentation. I thought it was really great and well thought out. Certainly understand the survey with the students and the parents. I'm just curious from the standpoint of the teachers, is it the implication that I hear is that there's no issues with having teachers in to support in classroom instruction. There's no limitations, and is it fair that those, at least at this time, there would be no constraint or limitation on how many students could be in the classroom, because there's all the teachers that are needed to be in class are there, or ready, willing, and able to be there.
The key for that one, if you don't mind, I'll just jump in on this one. The key for there is, like Caesar said, at least for the high school and the middle school as well, we're not adding any additional desks. So it's not a matter of students having to deal with all of a sudden one cohort or two cohorts of the middle school, there's now 15 kids and you can't socially distance. Everyone is socially distanced to the point where, I mean, you're not even eligible for a contact tracing really, because you're never within 6 feet for 20 minutes with a child. So that we're increasing the number of kids, but we're not in any way, impeding upon that 6 foot social distance requirement. So the classrooms are just as safe. That's why, Caesar mentioned, and again, in the middle school also, there's no desks are being added. So we're not trying to squeeze in extra kids. If there's a 14, that's why we have the satellite. And, speaking of that, I know we talk about, if you have 2 kids, I mean, don't forget, we are still talking about only the case if every single student shows up. And the other thing is, I mean, you might have 2 go to the satellite on a Monday, and then they all report to that same period on Tuesday, but 1 student is absent or 2 students are absent. So now you don't go to the next 2 names. Those next 2 names might wait 3-4 days before you get through it. So it's possible you could go weeks without circulating back around. So we are preparing for the worst. Like Caesar said, it's a great problem to have. We want to have the problem of too many kids, but when you still look at these situations, it's still, the upside so far exceeds any logistical issues that we'll have to work out. And there's going to be logistical issues. We know it's something new, but it's so well worth it that we're willing to, to move forward and adjust as we need to, and see what happens. Go ahead, Tony.
So I didn't say it clearly enough. My issue wasn't students; it was not having enough teachers in the classrooms. And I'm just thinking of, I know recently in another Essex County community, Montclair, they had to delay their plan for a long time to reopen today because they didn't have enough teachers. So my concern is from the standpoint of enough teachers to support in the classroom. And the implication I heard is that's not a problem. There's no limiting factors with teachers. That's what I was asking about.
Yeah, Tony, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to say, it was kind of in reference to that. I think the issue would have been, if safety guidelines were infringed upon, you might see some staff saying, I'm not comfortable. We haven't gotten there. I certainly haven't had any reason to believe that would be an issue. I know there were school districts that had this issue back in September. West Essex didn't. So I'm fully confident in the way things are handled that won't be an issue here either. But go ahead, Mr. Machochi.
Thank you. That's what I was interested in. Go ahead, Mr. Machochi.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, as you guys know, we hired 6 permanent substitute teachers this year. We'll utilize substitute teachers. We'll utilize our regular subs. I think at the high school, especially, they want to do whatever they can to try to make it work and to try to give the kids the best experience possible. I mean, we put together in our heads a column of pros and cons, and getting kids into structure, getting them to get up in the morning, take a shower, get dressed, get on a bus or get in a car, get into a routine, take 2,000 steps around the building as they change classes for physical activity. They can access a counselor, a case manager, a nurse, an adult, a teacher, a coach, an advisor. Our educators can see things in kids. They can tell if they're acting a little bit different on a certain day. They may engage in conversation with kids. So, those are all the benefits where maybe they're in the satellite room 1 block, but then the other 4 blocks, they talk to 20 other kids. They access a coach. They talk to a teacher. They go to practice after school, and it gets them out of their bedroom for some of those kids. And some other kids, maybe being home is good too, but maybe this environment is good for other kids. So those are kind of all the things that we looked at.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Are there any board committee reports? I don't think so, because we just had a reorg meeting. Okay. And no other comments. We will move on to public comment on agenda items. Okay. In accordance with bylaw 0167, a copy of which is available on the district's website, the board is now opening up the meeting for a period of public comment. Please remember to announce your name, place of residence, and group affiliation if appropriate. Your statements will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. The board will, of course, consider your comments as they relate to its obligations to effectively govern the West Essex School District. So I also want to remind everyone that this section of public comment is for agenda items only. It's the items that we will be voting upon tonight. If you have any questions or comments regarding any of the presentations, please ask those questions at the second public comments and not at this time. This is just for agenda items. Also, any specific questions or concerns regarding your individual child should be directed to their teacher or supervisor or building principal. So if you have any questions like that, I ask that you, contact the school directly. And Melissa will set a timer for 3 minutes. Please be considerate of others who may want the opportunity to speak. So at this time, if there are any questions on agenda items, you can raise your hand and Melissa will let you in.
So I have one hand up. I don't know. I think it's been up for a while, but let's see.
Okay.
It's Rita Lodato.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. It's Rita Lodato, North Caldwell. I just wanted to say thank you and to everyone that worked on this, and we truly appreciate that you're opening up the school to the one cohort. And I just wanted to thank you all.
Thank you, Rita. We appreciate it. Okay. Any other? I'm sorry.
I said you're welcome.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. We appreciate it. Okay. Are there any questions on the agenda? No. Okay.
No.
All right. So at this point, we will move on to our agenda for the evening.
One second. Let me just share that screen.
Okay, unfinished business. Tony, do you want to take that? I see you on the screen there.
Let me just make it a little bigger. Yes, Madam President. The following unfinished business motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 3, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich,
Yes.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yeah.
Mr. Stampone,
Yes.
Miss Wadwitz.
Yes. Hey, Cindy, do you want to take finance?
Sure. The following finance motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 8, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second. Any questions or comments? Okay, Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich. Okay, that was yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll make it louder.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Stampone,
Yes.
Miss Wadwitz.
Yes. Okay. Jill, do you want to take curriculum?
Sure. The following curriculum special education motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 5, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I just one question. It was referenced earlier, the esports club. Just curious on what that is. Sounds cool, but interesting.
Yeah. In a very brief summary, it's a gaming club.
Like video gaming?
Yeah. Mr. DiLiberto's passion here. But yeah, it's a gaming club. It's a very popular and growing activity. Mr. DiLiberto, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I'll just jump in. So, esports, people think it's gaming, but it's not. It's competitive video gaming. So it really, and there's a couple things that I really love about it. For one, it really services a population of ours that's frequently overlooked. And that doesn't quite get the celebration and the pomp and circumstance that others get in other sports. It is a very, very rapidly growing industry. It also would it sort of tangentially also affect a lot of be a part of other programs. Whether it's like our sport management program might be interested in. Like creating a tournament or something like that, but it really is competitive. Colleges usually have teams now that in the next few years they're actually anticipating there to be about like over $20 million in scholarships for esports. So we'll actually be one of the first high schools in the immediate area that have an esports team, and we're looking forward to getting the spring season done. We had an interest meeting just before the holidays, just before the winter break, and we have high 30s, like 36 students who are interested. So I mean, that's a great interest meeting for any sport. And something that I'm really excited about. We have equipment coming in. There will be tryouts soon, probably in February, and I'll update you more as soon as I get more information. But I am really excited about it.
Very cool. Well, thanks. I look forward to the updates. Thank you.
And Caesar, you gave us a presentation on this a while ago. I don't even remember. So it never got its feet off the ground, I guess, at that point. Now it's good. Okay.
Right, exactly. It was about a year ago that
I recall it then, but I didn't recall the details as either. So
right, and I didn't realize that it didn't, take off at that point. So okay, thank you for that information. Melissa, you can call the roll. Oh, unless there's any other questions. No, okay, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan?
Yes.
Miss Fahey?
Yes.
Miss Marcus?
yes.
Mr. Parati?
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich?
Yes.
Miss Calderon?
Yes.
Miss Skelton?
Yes.
Mr. Sampone?
Yes.
Miss Wajwitz?
Yes. Okay. Ray, do you want to take personnel?
Sure. The following personnel motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent in schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 10, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments?
Question. On items 9 and 10. So it looks like Myrna Patner. I apologize if I mispronounced the name. I assume she was one of the. We had 5 permanent substitutes hired. And it sounds like a good thing that she's being offered a full-time position as a special education teacher. My question is simply, are we now in the process of hiring another, or do we need to hire another permanent substitute teacher?
So if you recall at the last board meeting, we hired another permanent sub. And I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. Do we still have one more vacancy there, Melissa, now? I have to go back and check. We approved the 6th position at the last board meeting. We filled that position. Then we were moving Myrna into this other position, and we may have that one vacancy still open. So we can, after tonight's meeting, we can fill that 6th position now.
Correct. Now her position is now open because she went to full-time.
Okay. And I'm just curious, I know at the beginning of the year, that was that was an undertaking to try to find a staff of full, permanent substitute teachers, given our current circumstances. How is that working out? Are we feeling like that we have the right number and that it's meeting our needs?
It definitely is a benefit to know that we have 5 to 6 guaranteed people in every day.
Okay.
Definitely.
So going forward, it's something we'll likely continue as of this point. It looks like something we'll need to continue.
I would think so. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich,
Yes.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Sampone,
Yes.
Miss Wadsworth.
Yes. Okay, Anne, do you want to take miscellaneous?
Sure. The following miscellaneous motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 6, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Second. Okay.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich,
Yes.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Sampone,
Yes.
Miss Wadsworth.
Yes. Okay. So at this time, we will open up the floor for public comments on non-agenda items. So if anyone has a question, you can raise your hand.
Okay, I see a hand. So let me do. So first up is Ruth DiGiovanni.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect, great. I can ask a question just about the presentation with the one cohort.
Yes, you can. But Ruth, first, can you tell us what town you live in?
Sure, Ruth DiGiovanni, Roseland.
Roseland. Okay. Yes. Now you can
Okay.
ask any question you like.
Sure. Okay, so it's a few folded in. One is just currently now the teacher is zooming basically from the front. Children zoom into the classroom either from home or from the actual classroom. So one question is that going to change? And if so, then how is that going to change for the children who are actually remote? My second fold question is just personally, I mean, where I'm full time, my teachers are there all the time, and it's definitely a lot of fatigue for them. And I'm concerned. I know it's just like an overflow room, at least that's what we call it. But the management of that, and then in addition to that, the time it'll take for the child to get to the overflow room, and the classroom time lost while waiting for them to then get to the classroom, log on, and kids are still sitting there and zooming from home. So if we can just address like kind of those points at all?
So we can a couple of us can kind of respond to this, but
sure.
The rooms are set up so our teachers are also 6 feet away from the students, and we have plexiglass up. So I'm not sure how much different the class.
I'm saying, is the teacher not going to be sitting zooming at her computer anymore? And so then how is that going to impact the kids that are zooming from home? Like, is she going to be now or he up at the board teaching, or are they still going to be at their computer?
I can't speak for sure, but I think you might see a combination of both. But we have to remember that there are still a percentage of kids at home as well.
Right.
Trying to, navigate a classroom with kids in it and kids at home is something that, the teachers are working through those challenges. So
yeah, no, we're doing it and it's terrible. That's why I'm hoping they'll stay at their desk.
So,
Yeah.
that, and then we haven't experienced this yet. So I think, once we live it, and we'll see, where the kinks are that we might have to work out. And I can turn that over to the high school principal for that piece.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough too that those satellite rooms or the you could call them the overflow, but I kind of like satellite. They're all pretty centrally located in the building. So they're like the library and the cafeterias are pretty centrally located in the building. So it wouldn't take very long for anybody to get there. And I can't stress enough that out of all of our class sections, there are only 16%. Only 16% that potentially have that are potentially.
Sorry, that's okay.
So it would really be affecting minimal students. So we'd really have to see if for some reason we thought it was if it was and it was really interrupting the class, that the few minutes that it took to get there. Then we would troubleshoot that. Maybe try something else. Maybe a different location.
Sure. I hope that we're just mindful of the children who are still Zooming, and we don't have them can be even more disengaged, and that we're mindful of the teachers multitasking now, not just the 2 kids sitting in their class, but maybe 10 kids sitting in their class, and her obvious obligation to them, but the obligation for kids at home too. I'm just saying from experience, we've been doing it since the beginning of the year, and it's super draining on the teachers. I just hope we keep all of those components in mind. It's a lose-lose-lose, even though it feels like a win-win-win. But it's really hard on all pieces. Okay.
Next up is Wendy Nash.
Hi. My question is about the high school for the full cohort, which I'm super excited about. But how can you just go over 2 questions? The timing, is it still they still go home at lunchtime? And yes, okay. And what happens if the kids have gym? Are they actually getting changed and doing gym?
So to answer your first question, yes, it's still a 12-17 dismissal, the 88-minute lunch, and then that final block is from home. So for phys ed, students are still all going to phys ed. Obviously the weather's a little colder now. In the fall they were trying to go outside as much as possible, and the phys ed activities will vary. I mean, even in phys ed now, they're actually, I give a lot of credit to the phys ed staff and the health staff recently, because they've really taken and shouldered the burden of a lot of the SEL stuff. So even if they can't necessarily do physical activity, they'll do like coloring kind of stuff, meditative types of exercises like that. And I've gone into plenty of rooms where they're doing that if they can't be more active.
Okay. Thanks. I wish everyone a lot of luck. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you for trying hard.
Okay. Next up is Suzanne Golden.
Yes, hi, this is Suzanne Golden from Roseland. I have a question. First of all, I just want to say, like most everyone has mentioned, that I'm grateful and appreciative for all of the work and effort that went into this plan. And I understand that there's a contingency of parents who are, very happy with the fact that their children will now be going in 4 days a week. But there are definitely some parents like myself who, when we agreed to go in or send our children in, for in-person instruction, perhaps we're not ready to send them back 4 days a week, and perhaps the children themselves are not ready to go back 4 days a week. And I understand Mr. Diliberto's plea, to honor our commitment to sending the children in person. But I'm just trying to understand now. I understand that when we signed up, we agreed that if there were 3 consecutive absences, that our children would then have to revert back to remote. So I guess my question is, if you're not quite prepared to send your child 4 days a week and they're not prepared to go back yet 4 days a week because the experience obviously won't be, complete normalcy yet, is there won't be any repercussion if your child goes 2 or 3 days a week, as long as those absences are not consecutive. Am I understanding that correct?
Well, that's the way it was written, so that's what we'd adhere to. I would still try to encourage anybody to come to the building. I think they're going to be pleased with the experience there. I really hope so. Like I just said, we're trying real hard to make it a positive environment and get as many people there. So I think even if a student came in, even if they were a little reluctant at first, but came in 1 or 2 times and saw what was going on, even if they were uncomfortable a little bit with that many people, I think that within 1, 2, or 3 times they'd be feeling much more comfortable. But we're adhering to what was on the questionnaire.
Okay, so it's 3 consecutive absences, and then they must revert back to remote.
I believe that's what was
unexcused.
Correct. Okay, just so I'm understanding. Thank you so much.
I mean, I just want to jump in here. I think if a child's having an issue like that, you should definitely feel free to talk to guidance counselors, to teachers, to the principal. It's not we're here to work together to make sure all the students can feel comfortable. So that I think is an extenuating circumstance that needs to be discussed.
No, that's not at all the circumstance. What I think, to answer Mr. Parati's question from earlier as to why some students want to stay remote, is they do have some of them have terrific setups of 1, 2 monitors that they're in their homes, they're unmasked, and they're actually learning. They're in higher level classes where they're actually able to focus. They have offices to themselves or bedrooms to themselves or whatever. So it's not a question of being of having any extenuating circumstance. It's more to go back to school initially for 4 days a week just may be a bit much to sit there masked when they may have to zoom in anyway on a computer. It just may not be the most ideal situation for some kids. But that's it. I just wanted to understand the policy more. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Maya.
Hi there. This is Maya Autre from Essex Fells. I wanted to first thank you all so very much for all the hard work, the care, and all that you've been doing to really try to accommodate families of all needs. And and that my son is thriving given the circumstances. One question I had was about the question that was raised earlier, which is, why are so many parents opting to keep their kids home? And I'm just kind of surprised by that. I understand that you're offering everybody who, whether we feel comfortable during the pandemic sending our kid in or not, and everybody, has different situations. And regardless of if we have underlying conditions or not, many people are dying regardless of it. So, with new variants going on, there's a good reason why we're all in this situation. I guess I'm kind of surprised by the question and the fact that it was, the only answer considered was convenience. It's, whether my kid goes into school or not, he gets up, he showers, he sits in front of a computer. Like, we haven't turned into savages just because we're concerned about our family's safety and sending them in for the pandemic. So that's the only thing that I'm a little puzzled by.
I can.
Mary, you're muted, just so you know.
Nima, I just want to, respond to her. We were just mentioning what came up in a committee from a student. I think somebody mentioned, whether it's Mr. Machochi or someone, there are so many reasons, good reasons, different scenarios. There are a lot of reasons why students are not coming in. Again, we tried to assess some of them in the survey, whether it was because there was so few kids in the class, but we've heard all kinds of different reasons, and certainly there are very legitimate reasons for keeping your kids at home, and that's why we do want to honor that. If you choose to keep your kids at home for whatever reason, we do want to honor that. I think the key is those we're providing the opportunity for those who do feel comfortable to have their kids come in more often, and that is the big plus. But certainly there are a wide range of reasons why the interest level of coming every day in person is not what we had hoped. But I think that's, to give that some context, I think that was a student committee brought that up, and we were trying to give the student perspective about why more students weren't choosing it. And this particular student talked about, it was a good setup to sleep in a little bit more, to dress comfortably, no mask. That is certainly one of the things we're overcoming, but it's not the small change, the other reasons that are out there too.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. But just to reiterate, I really am grateful that you're giving everybody what I perceive as an equitable education, regardless of what we choose. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Next up is A. Kirshner.
Hi, it's Mrs. Kirshner from Fairfield. I just want to kind of take from the last speaker. If Mr. Gupta, is there any way, I mean, I do a number of survey analysis in my role. Is there any way for you to kind of point out more from the parents' point of view, what were the top three, I guess, most stated reasons as to, why they chose to, why families choose to be remote in terms of volume? I'm sure that kind of, it would keep, individuals anonymous, but can you speak to it that way? I'm sure for health reasons, that will probably be number one in terms of concerns of, contracting COVID, being an environment. People are, some people are less comfortable than others in that respect, but can you state what might be the next two majority reasons as to why people go remote? I'm just curious.
Sure. I mean, having read through every single one, I can tell you that I can't even name one because there wasn't a common theme about why a parent was keeping them. By far, the most common comment listed in the surveys was, these kids need to be in school every day, and a full day. That was by far the most repeated comment of kids in school. There were not comments of, if this occurred more, then I would send my child, or if only this, then I would send my, there wasn't that. I mean, there were sporadic comments, of, my child, the environment, the instruction, it's almost the same whether you're in person or not. There were a couple of comments about those. And again, we've responded to that in previous meetings. We do want to provide the same opportunities for both, at home. So it is a balance act for the teachers. But to answer your question, there was not top two, not even a top one where I could say parents were constantly or repeatedly or even any type of recurring comment about why they weren't sending their child. Now, we've heard anecdotal reasons. We have our own reasons. We've heard from teachers. We've heard from students. And again, there's so many that there wasn't one that jumped to the top of the list. One that had come up in the committee the most often we had heard was, well, if there were more students in the room, it would feel more normal, and then my child would want to come. So that's why that specific question made it to the survey. But in terms of the data and the responses, it didn't really come out that was a major reason, and nothing came out of the comments. So
Got it.
Unfortunately, there was no pattern in terms of the reasons for not more kids wanting to come in.
Well, I'm thrilled you're making these moves, and quite frankly, I'll just have some challenges at home with my middle school child only going in twice and my older one complaining about going 4, and she's going to try to convince me otherwise, but she's not going to pull the wool over my eyes. So thank you for that challenge, but I really appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Alyssa Raymond.
Yes, this is actually Joshua Raymond from North Caldwell. We had signed up for in person for the third marking period. And I wanted to know if now that the cohort situation has changed, if we're allowed to switch. And that would hold true for either way, based on the new changes that you're announcing tonight. Can we switch to all remote, or can we switch to in person based upon the new changes that you're implementing tonight? Thank you.
So at this time, the only change you can make is anybody at any time can go from in person to fully remote.
Okay, thank you very much. So if we had signed up for in person for the third marking period, we could let the school know that we decided to go remote for the whole marking period.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I believe that is it.
That's it? Okay, great. Okay, so,
Let me put up the screen.
can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second, perfect. Okay, Deb, do you want to read us out?
There being no further business before the Board of Education, be it resolved that this public meeting be adjourned at 9:08.
Excellent.
I so move.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Have a good night.
Have a good week.
Everybody, good night.
Good week.
Thanks, everyone.